Good evening, everyone. It is 8 o'clock Eastern Time, so we will go ahead and get started. On behalf of the Student Academy of Doctors of Audiology, I would like to welcome you to today's Student Practice Management webinar, Visiting Planning for Audiologists. My name is Andrew Abernathy. I am pleased to serve as today's course coordinator. I have just a few housekeeping reminders before we begin. If you have any technical challenges during the session, please use the chat feature to make me aware, and I will be glad to assist you. Please type your questions into the question queue and they will be addressed by the presenter at the end of the presentation. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be available for online viewing next week. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce the course moderator for this session, Kate Witham, SATA Board President and third-year audiology student at Gallaudet University.
Hi, thank you, Andrew. On behalf of the SATA board, I am excited for the opportunity to welcome AUD students from programs across the country to this session on business planning. It is also my distinct pleasure to introduce today's course leader, Dr. Robert Trainer. For 45 years, Dr. Robert Trainer practiced audiology at his clinic, Audiology Associates, Inc. in Greeley, Colorado. He also conducted operative monitoring for otolaryngologists and general surgeons for 25 years at 3 hospitals in northern Colorado. He has been a frequent lecturer domestically and internationally in over 40 countries on most aspects of audiology. For 17 years, he was the senior international audiology consultant to a major hearing aid manufacturer based in Bern, Switzerland, where he provided technical support to engineers and hearing scientists within the research and development group. He is a 2017 Fellow of the National Academies of Practice, was presented the 2014 Lifetime Achievement Award from the Colorado Academy of Audiology, named a 2018 Distinguished Alumnus of the University of Northern Colorado, and the recipient of the Joe Warnick Award from the Academy of Doctors of Audiology in 2019. Dr. Trainer was part of the Doctor of Audiology online faculty at the University of Florida in 1998 to 2020, where he designed and implemented one of the first courses in audiology practice management that is now duplicated across the country. His text, Strategic Practice Management, 3rd edition, co-authored by Dr. Robert Glazer, is now used in most audiology training programs. At his firm, Robert Trainer Audiology, LLC, he offers professional advice to the hearing industry and provides expert witness services for personal injury and audiology malpractice cases. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Trainer.
Thanks very much, Kate. I very much appreciate a beautiful introduction, and thank you very much for that. Yeah, I'm actually humbled by being asked by the SATA group to be part of this series. The group that you have organized to be part of this series are people that I sit in the front row trying to listen to when Milani talks about pricing. I'm in the front row listening every time, and as well as the others. So thank you very much for the invitation. And so it's my duty this evening to discuss the business planning for audiologists. And I know that it was budgeting as part of the title as well, but budgeting and business planning kind of go hand in hand. And so before we can do the budgets, we have to have a plan. And usually after you have a plan, then once you execute that plan, then you can go back through how you executed it one year and make any modifications relative to budgets from there. So without further discussion, we'll get into this absolutely exhilarating topic of business planning. These days, well, let's see now. Nothing, there it goes. So business planning these days is even more essential than it really ever has been. And I'm here to tell you that in my small little town, about 110,000 people, in 2005, I had 4 competitors. by the time I left the clinic in 2019, we had a whopping 11 competitors. And because of the 11 competitors, I was constantly looking at each one of them and trying to find out as much as possible about everyone, so I could do practice analysis, I could actually change strategies as necessary, and so on. But if you're beginning a practice or you have an existing practice, in the noise of 11 competitors, business planning becomes really essential. So what are we going to do here? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about why you care about doing a business plan. We've already talked a little about that. Then we'll look at some pre-planning exercises. And then from there, we'll go on to formal business planning, which is, these are two quite different projects. And then from there, we'll talk some do's and don'ts about the business planning exercises that we have just discussed. And then look at some of the main mistakes in business plans that people actually find. And so let's kind of look at why we care about planning. Business planning is not a fun exercise, and although it's much easier than it used to be with some of the tools we have these days, it's still not a fun exercise. It takes a lot of time, energy, effort, research, and so on. So Ben Franklin actually said that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So you want to make sure that you do some sort of planning. It's also said that that a number of individuals don't do business plans, but the ones that do a business plan are about 30% more successful than the ones who don't do business plans. Now, can you do this in your head? Well, sure you can. You can do this in your head, and you can just kind of go by the seat of your pants and move along. Business plans set specific objectives for managers. They share the strategies, the actions, and the specific kinds of things that you hope to do with everyone that's around you. It teaches you to deal with displacement. Displacement, if you're not familiar with that, that means that you have a practice and you have responsibilities there, and you might not make the soccer game that night. You might not be able to go on vacation when the rest of the family thinks you should. So there's a lot of displacement associated with practices and so on. Plans actually have you consider the space requirements that you need. It considers and organizes the hiring of people. And it looks at what kind of assets you're going to need to begin this business and to maintain that practice for a period of time. It looks at sharing and explaining the goals. You want to share and explain those goals with your team and what kind of objectives you have for this particular business enterprise. And although it's a practice, it really is a business enterprise. It also lets you set up business alliances with suppliers. These would be the people that are going to supply your equipment, maybe your products, as well as your not only products but also things like clinic supplies and maybe even office supplies and those kinds of things. And then there's also the business alliances with supportive professionals. These would be your accountant, extremely important, your attorney, also maybe bankers and other kinds of supportive people that might be part of your practice as well. It allows you to take an existing business and use the plan to grow that business in a significant way. And business plans are also used for valuation. And there's a lot of reasons why you may want to evaluate your business. You may need to take in a partner, and then the business has to be evaluated. You may have other things that come up. Life might happen. You may have to assess the practice for legal reasons, maybe divorce or some other kind of dispute along the line someplace. And of course, people that are selling practices or purchasing practices want to look to see what the business has done and what it's going to do, what the projections are and the strategies are, and so on for the future. So that's another reason to do a business plan. And then those that are seeking investment in the business. Banks aren't usually a good source these days. Of course, manufacturers are one of the main sources for loans for practice purchases and practice expansion and so on. Investors such as insurance companies and so on are probably not a good idea either. But no matter whether it's any of those or whether it's Uncle Harry that's going to loan you all the money, or if it's your own bank account, you owe it to yourself to do a plan so you don't lose all your money in an enterprise that doesn't pan out. So those are main reasons to do it. And of course, a good plan is a compelling storyboard. I mean, it tells who you are and why you're in business, what you do, and how you go about doing it. And it also looks at how you're going to generate profits in your particular practice. When I was a student, practice was a nasty word. These days, it's not a nasty word. It is why you go to school for 8 years to become an independent audiology practitioner. And without profit, your patients are left hanging high and dry because you will not be in business. This storyboard tells who the customers or patients are. Who are these people? And why your business is so important. And I know all of you, every single one of you, have an idea that's going to rock, and it's going to be the coolest thing known to man if you ever get into practice where you can actually execute those beautiful ideas. A plan is also a roadmap where you follow the road as indicated, and you come to a fork in the road, and it tells you which way to go, whether you go to the right or the left or straight ahead. So blueprints are another way to think of a business plan. Building blocks and how things go together is another way to think of planning for your practice. Now, how am I going to do this? Well, can I use books? Can I use computer programs? Yeah, you can. Books, we used at Florida for the first 3-4 years, we used books. And books are great to read about things and interact about them, but business planning is so exciting that after about 2-3 paragraphs of business planning chapters, you find yourself falling asleep pretty easily. Books are difficult and they don't have very many templates or anything like that. After a few years, we began looking at computer programs. And boy, did we think we were rocket scientists using business planning programs to develop the business plans. And at the time, it probably was. But one of the problems we had is that some people used apples and other people used oranges in terms of computers. And so the orange people all got the deal on the software, where the Apple people had to pay more. So sometimes it wasn't as compatible with one version of a computer as another. But computers worked generally well, but they don't have instructional videos with them, and they don't have some of the templates that are necessary. So one of the best things I've found is a program called LivePlan, and I mentioned to my colleagues at ADA and Kate as your president that I don't get anything from LivePlan except for a deal for my students. And because I think it is about the best tool going for doing a good business plan. They have instructional kinds of things there. It's simple, it's web-based, it goes with any computer. At the bottom of this slide is a link, and there's a link here, and there's one at the last slide as well, that will take you to the LivePlan program, and I think it's 15% off for a 3-month subscription or something like that. But whatever it is, it's absolutely worth it. It's going to save you lots and lots and lots of time. And to orient you a little bit to LivePlan, here's a little video that we have that we'll play. And
so you're an entrepreneur, and you're ready to start pitching your idea to lenders and investors, and you know what they're going to ask for. your business plan. But you don't have an MBA. You aren't an accountant, and you aren't getting into business to stay up all night crunching numbers. You need something that's easy to use and that gives you a professional plan that you can really put into action. Welcome to LivePlan. With over 500 sample business plans covering virtually every industry, you'll save hundreds of hours of work. You can collaborate securely and easily with partners. And if you need some outside help, there are expert instructions and video advice at every step, along with free customer support. You can also build a one-page visual snapshot for quick pitching and export it so you can impress audiences anywhere, anytime. But a business plan isn't just something you create and then forget. With LivePlan, you can easily transition to setting goals and measuring progress, taking you from day one to year one and beyond. LivePlan even integrates with accounting software like QuickBooks and Xero, can handle multiple companies, and has helped more than 250,000 businesses get off the ground fast. Research has shown that when businesses plan, they grow 30% faster than businesses that don't plan. Let LivePlan help you maximize your business's potential. Get started today with our 60-day risk-free money-back guarantee. LivePlan, business planning, goal setting, and financial tracking made easy.
You know, they say they have 500 templates. Not one of them is an audiology clinic. So we have to kind of start at square one. And square one is the pre-planning or the pitch that we use. And in LivePlan, they call it the pitch, and I've always called it a pre-planning exercise. And this is what we mean by that. Well, the pitch or the pre-plan is kind of your informal thoughts about your project. It's the cocktail napkin that you're sitting around having drinks with friends, or you could be sitting at church and having interaction. You could be sitting in a lot of different situations, but you're writing on the cocktail napkin the things that you want to do. You're looking at having an informal discussion with yourself as well as others as to the kind of practice that you really want. It's really kind of preparation for your formal business plan that you're going to spend a lot of time, effort, and energy working on. And this kind of a thing is really a process because it kind of starts a little bit and then it gets a little bit more and a little bit more. The practitioner actually analyzes and learns from whatever external and internal environments they find themselves in to formulate whatever goals they want to achieve. And then they look at establishing a direction for the practice by creating strategies that are intended to help achieve the goals that they're working toward. And then, of course, they want to safely execute those strategies. Now, if you look at this a little bit, you have to ask yourself 4 questions before you really begin to get into this. The first thing is, what service or product does the business provide, and what need does it fill? Well, we know what service and products we're going to provide, but what kind of a need is it? Is it a pediatric need? Is it a noise control need? Is it a tinnitus need? Is it some other kind of a need? And those other that's part of the first 4 questions you ask yourself. And from there, you move to the potential customers for your product, or the potential patients for your product or service. And why are they going to buy things from you? And you're going to hear me say this quite a bit this hour. Why are they going to buy things from you and not the people that are up the street where they're going right now? Because everybody's going somewhere else right now, and you're starting your practice. How are you going to reach all those people? How are you going to reach out and touch them? You're going to go to meetings, you're going to send direct mail. How are you going to go about reaching out to those individuals? And then, of course, the last question, and a big one, is where are you going to get the financial resources to start and run your business? I would caution you that many of the manufacturers' loans these days all have prepayment penalties. So if you have obtained a loan for your practice, look at the other end of it. Let's say your practice takes off like a rocket ship and you want to pay your loan off early. Many of those loans have a 20% prepayment clause. So you want to check on those things. Have your attorney go over the paperwork and actually tell you what's going on when you're looking at your financial resources. So let's take the pre-planning or the pitch and begin to analyze that just a little bit. First of all, the external and internal analysis is really a look at external factors and internal factors that influence your practice. The external factors would be things like the economy. The economy is really pretty good right now, well, except for the stock market the last few days because of the virus. But generally, the economy right now is not too bad compared to what it was during the second Great Depression back in about 09 or 10. And so the economy is a factor. What kind of competition is out there? And what kind of suppliers? So what kind of supply, what am I going to do about my suppliers? And am I going to use a buying group or am I not going to use a buying group? Referral sources. Am I going to do a lot of referral sources? Am I just going to work on family practice, or am I going to get other people like internal medicine, maybe nurse practitioners, doctors, or other kinds of allied health individuals? And then, of course, the insurance companies are all out there competing with us too, in addition to trying to knock us down in terms of our margins and so on within the clinic. You know, usually insurance programs, they start kind of, they get real big, and then people find out what they really are, then they go down a little bit, and they adjust those so that things will happen. And I think we're in the down part of that right now. A lot of those insurance programs may make it back in the future. Internal factors are things like personnel. Is it just going to be you and an answering machine? Is it going to be you and a clerical individual? Is it going to be 3 audiologists and 2 clerical people? How are you going to structure your internal personnel? Office policies and procedures manual. Dr. Glazer has a fabulous chapter on a detailed policy and procedures manual in our textbook. Equipment, where you're going to get it? Is it going to be new or used? And is it going to be leased, or are you going to buy it? Who's going to supply it? Who are going to be the suppliers that you're going to deal with? Office building. Is it going to be an office building, or is it going to be a strip mall, or is it going to be a medical building? And then, of course, the bottom one is capital. Where are we going to find the capital? And again, this is all cocktail napkin kinds of things that we're working with here. So the next thing, once we have a look at the external and internal factors that we have to deal with, then we're going to look at strategic direction. Here we're going to try to decide on an action. And really it's the question of what kind of a practice do you want? Do you want to have a practice that deals with, for example, deals with general audiology, maybe some monitoring that's involved in that? It's not quite as easy as it used to be. Maybe you want to focus on pediatrics or vestibular. Maybe you choose to do ABR, or maybe you don't choose to do that. Maybe you don't choose to, you're not going to probably do cochlear implants, but you may be involved in the programming of cochlear implants and the programming of people in rural areas with cochlear implants as well. You're going to do hearing aids, of course, but are they going to be routine hearing aids? Are they going to be extended wear? Are they going to maybe be implantable hearing aids that you're going to be tuning for people? Are they going to be, maybe you're going to have to, you should have some PSAPs laid around and some hearables laid around and some headsets and a number of other things that are hearing products to become a real hearing center. So you have to decide what kind of a practice you want. And this is a full menu, of course, of the kinds of practices that we may want, but it is at least an idea of where we can begin to go. Then you're going to take this and have a strategy formulation component where you're going to look at strategic methods and then try to implement that into a particular orientation. So you're going to formulate a strategy for dealing with all of the external and internal variables as well as the direction of the clinic. And these would be things like, well, you'll want to look at strategies, and it's another lecture, another day, another time, but strategy could be a low-cost strategy. You don't want that because everybody else is doing that. Your focus strategy could be you're focusing on pediatrics, or you're focusing on vestibular, or you're focusing on something else. Most of us end up with a differentiation strategy that we're going to use, where we're trying to be different than the clinic up the street and so on. You have to decide whether you're going to do heavy marketing. A lot of the manufacturer-based clinics do lots and lots of heavy marketing. Are you going to be referral-based? What types of employees are you going to have relative to how you've chose to structure your clinic? And then, of course, there's always the pricing. I'd say about 2/3 of the individuals are now bundled. We are beginning to see some unbundled, and then just in its infancy is also leasing of products. And my suggestion is to use a hybrid system where you kind of use some sort of everything. That way you can take care of patients that bought their products somewhere else. You can take care of your own patients. You can lease things and so on. Of course, we're all going to be patient-centric, and we're going to try to manage all the risk that goes into practice. And the risk, there's so many of them, they're hard to name, but risk management is a big one. And of course, one of the big ones is government regulations, which have changed. Another big one would be the insurance companies and some of those other kinds of issues. Then I implement this strategy and the kind of practice that we thought we wanted, and once we implement that, then we kind of sit back and look at and see how we would do, and we can kind of try to predict that. Maybe try to control that with a positive and negative result somehow, and then you might have to restructure a little bit. I'm going to tweak this pre-plan a little bit because I don't think the other one is going to work based on my initial research. So pre-plan then kind of sets up the pitch that you would enter into LivePlan. And LivePlan, the cool thing about that is you'll be able to look at that. In fact, we've got a little thing about that right here, where this lady is going to tell you all about the things you can do with your pitch. So you take the data from your and your orientation from the pre-planning exercise, and you enter that into the
Let me show you how to make a
LivePlan
pitch in LivePlan. As you're working here in the pitch, you can just mouse over each section and it gives you the opportunity to click in and add your data. So everything begins with the name of your company, and then you put in a headline, which is just a single sentence or two that talks about the unique value that your company is going to offer. In the opportunity section, you have the chance to talk about the problem that your product or service is going to solve and how it's going to solve that problem. And then you can get into your target market. LivePlan will generate this beautiful graph for you. All you have to do is put in the types of customers that your business is going to serve and about how many of them are in your area to serve. You can talk a bit about your competitors and how your company presents a better solution than theirs. And then you can also list what your funding needs are going to be to get up and running. In the sales and marketing section, you can talk about your sales plans and how you'll market the business. And in financial projections, you can either use the forecast data that you've put into the plan you're building and have that display in these nice bar charts. Or if you want to go simpler, you can just type in a bulleted list of financial highlights. Milestones are specific goals with specific due dates, and you can enter those in this milestone section. And then under team and key roles and partners and resources, you can talk about the people and the resources that are going to make your company great. And to dress things up, you can also add photographs of them to the pitch as well. Once all of this material is in your pitch, then you have two different ways that you can share it with others. First, you can publish it as a web page, and this is a web page that only you and people that you share the link with can see. Or you can download the pitch to PowerPoint, and it'll create a slide deck that you can use for presentation. And with that, you've completed your pitch.
And with that, we're ready to do our formal business planning. You know, this is really 21st century business planning. This is how you do it now. You gather the research and the pre-plan and the data, enter that into the pitch, and that's the place that you start. And so now with the formal business planning, it really gets down to detail here. It's based on pre-plan or the pitch. And again, one of the things about business planning is you'll get online and you'll say, well, that isn't the same thing that Bob Trainer told me. It's a little different. Well, the idea is they do change a little bit from one plan to another, but the essential components are similar across the various methods of business planning. And my suggestion is that we use the LivePlan because it makes it so much easier, as you can see from some of the videos. Now, the components of a formal business plan include the executive summary, the mission and vision statement, the practice overview, the market assessment, the competitive analysis, and these days that's really important, as well as the personnel and human resources area, the operational plan, the financial components, and that's an extremely important component as well. Maybe some appendices that you need that you're going to put at the end of that to facilitate that support for certain concepts and so on that you're going to use in your particular practice. Now, the table of contents really is pretty straightforward. It's just there to list key sections of the plan, and it's used to assist the reader in locating specific places. I want to go back to that financial section. Just that on. It brings organization and structure to your overall business plan. Now, probably the most important part of the plan itself, if your formal business plan, is something they call the executive summary. The executive summaries are used in a lot of business proposals, are used in a lot of project proposals, but here in the plan, it determines if your plans are really going to be read or if it's not going to be read. It provides an enthusiastic snapshot then of your plan, what you want to do. Who are you, and what do you do, and why is my idea so cool that it's going to set the world on fire? And usually these things are done in a page, usually never more than a couple of pages. My understanding is that the Boeing business plan for the whole business of Boeing company was about 5 pages. That's the executive summary. So the deal is, this needs to be short and sweet and to the point and easy to read. At the end of the executive summary, the reader should have a good basic understanding of your company, and they should also want to go more into it because, oh, this is so interesting, I really want to know more about this. And now, the executive summary itself, and there are various versions of this online as well, but you're going to look at the problem, and that's the first paragraph to grab their interest. Then you're going to look at the scope and the limitations of the practice, alternatives or procedures that are done in the practice, things that are maybe a little different than usual, significant considerations, and then you're going to take an analysis, summarize whatever your analysis was of the competition in the market and so on, and then come up with some summary decisions that are made. And again, all of this stuff in a page or so. Now, the interesting thing about an executive summary is it's extremely important, but it is the first thing that's read, but it's the last thing that's written, because you've got to write the whole plan and then go through the whole summary before you actually write the executive summary. So tips for an executive summary would be, lead with the most compelling statement of why you have a really, 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 really big idea. And sentence or two usually sets the tone for that, but it should be direct and specific. And if you don't do this correctly, your business plan will probably end up in the round file, and the executive summary is all that's left, all that's read. It's a good idea to drop some impressive names of investors or companies. None of us are going to have Nobel Prize winners that are going to work with us or for us, unless Uncle Harry is one of those, and so on. But the idea is to impress the reader with some things that are special about this particular project. Now, the place to start for the business plan is really the mission and vision statement. This describes the business. It should be futuristic. It should be a memorable and engaging expression of kind of hope and inspiration and that kind of thing. A lot of times people will take their mission and vision statement and post it in the waiting room, so the patients will even know what their mission and vision is. It's a statement that should be concise and specific, and if not, specific goals may not be achieved if it's way too broad. So it needs to be certain amount of to the point as well, and a proclamation of overall nature and direction of the practice, what the practice or project is going to do and what it's not going to do. And it serves too as an internal statement of guidance for all the people that are involved in the practice. It informs people as to the philosophy that you want to project and also your commitment to excellence. Here's a mission statement that used to be in my clinic that said audiology associates will work honestly and diligently every day to exceed the expectations of our patients and referral sources by providing the best hearing and balance care in our community. So yeah, that's a little pompous and a little bit of a proclamation, but you need to have something like that. That's your vision and mission and vision statement to set the tone for what you're trying to do. So some tips on this: you need to make it clear about the situation or problem that you're going to solve. You want to establish a value proposition. All that pain is out there, and you're going to solve it by exceeding everyone's expectations. You're going to increase revenues, reduce costs, increase speed, expand the reach, eliminate inefficiency, on and on with your fabulous idea that's going to be altogether different than what's being done correctly currently. Now, the practice overview is another section. And here you want to do an overview of the hearing industry, specifically the profession of audiology. And you'll have to, these days, probably talk about all the issues that happened that made some of the changes in the competitive market. A little bit about the baby boomers, a little bit about the non-penetration of the hearing aid market and some of those things. Look at current trends and a future outlook of where practices are going. If you're in an existing clinic, you'll want to talk about the history of the practice, because the investors are going to want to know where you came from, what you've been doing, how it's been going, as well as the development of the practice and how it's working these days. They'll want to look at office locations. They'll want to look at your website. They'll want to look at business structure and the principals within the group. Principals would be the people that are the stakeholders in your practice. If it's you and your family, or you and Uncle Harry, or you and someone that gave you some a loan, they want to know a little about those contributions. And if there are no contributions to the practice, how much are you going to contribute? Your contribution always, if you have some sort of skin in the game, the funders of practices are a lot more willing to loan their money. It's a narrative kind of about the services and the products that are offered into the market. It describes the contemporary circuits and treatment trends and relates them to the needs within the market, because you might have a need for example, pediatric services. Maybe the closest big town where they have a huge pediatric centers maybe 70, 80 miles away. So you would relate that need into the market, because a lot of people that have those issues that have to take off a day, spend the night, and then come back and do lots of different things. So there's a lot of things with the practice overview to make your clinic stand out. The reader should be able to develop a really clear idea of the things that you offer in your practice and what differentiates your practice from the others that are already out there in the marketplace. So how and why are you going to get the business? What makes you different than the 5 other business plans that I'm reading this week? That kind of thing. So angles on a business that will differentiate a practice will be things like location, experience, education, the brands that you're working with, the services that you offer, the philosophy, and there's a bunch of other differences that you can amplify as well that goes and follows right into the idea that you're beginning to present. Now, market assessment is huge. You need to have people that are going to be interested in your practice and your services. So customers or patients with shared characteristics. So who are they? Well, of course, they're hearing impaired. Where are they? Well, they're in your community, of course. Well, how many of them are there, and how many are willing, how many are just out there that you can go after for a market share? Well, you have to drill down this thing. You have to start with statistics by various agencies. Here it could be ASHA, AAA, ADA, could be a number of others. And then you find out what the incidence of the issue that you're trying to work with. Once you have that incidence, then you look for the number of patients that would be in your particular community that would have those issues. Then you might look at ways in which you can delineate that population to the population that you're actually looking for. So market assessment starts broad, and then we begin to drill down into a small little group that is your particular group of patients, which we call the target market. Now, there's also something called market segmentation, and you can segment a market by geographics, by where the people are located. You can do demographics, and a lot of us do that if we're looking for older people. We start with 60 years of age and go up from there. If it's pediatrics, you may have a different focus. If it's something else, you may have a different focus in the demographics also. Psychographics would be the value systems, and behavioral would be the things they like to do. One time we had a marketing campaign that we were looking for high frequency hearing impaired, and we found people in our area, 60 or over, that really wanted to be with their families and interact, but their behavior was that they loved motorcycles and they loved things that were noisy like rifles and all those things. And so people that had those interests, then we marketed to them. So it's just an example of what a market segmentation would be. And want to describe contemporary services and treatment trends and relate them then to the needs that are in the market area. Maybe your area has a huge group of shooters, a huge group of hunting people that are hunters. Or maybe there's a huge group of individuals that do something else that creates hearing impairment. Well, you may want to target that group, and then you have to talk about how you're going to approach them. Are you going to do it with direct mail? You're going to do it with the TV? You're going to do it with this? You're going to do it with that? All different modes. And how and why will they value your business more than the competitors up the street? Why are they going to go to you? And then the reader should be able to develop a really clear idea of why you're different than the rest of the group. Market really is defined by many different parameters, and a lot of this area deals with how the practice will market to a targeted audience using various accepted marketing techniques. And one of those is defined by McCarthy long time ago, called the 4 Ps. And the 4 Ps are product, price, promotion, and place. Meaning what are you selling, how much you're selling it for, how are you going to promote it, and where are you going to sell it, pretty much. And we call that the marketing mix. And the marketing mix, it goes after the target market. So we have to give the impression to the people that are reading the business plan that we've conducted intense market research and that we know that market one way and backwards and forwards, and what methods we're going to use to research the market and how we're going to arrive at how we arrived at the conclusions that we arrived at. So what did we do to learn all we know, and how we came to these conclusions. We want to establish who the target market is and how do you propose to do things uniquely for that group, where patients will definitely go to you and not the competition. For example, in a 2-3 city blocks in New York City, that could be your whole market area. In my market area from Greeley, Colorado, I consider all of northeastern Colorado my marketing area, and even a little bit west of town to the interstate as well. Those of you from Colorado will understand that. But the deal is that that you need to establish your target market. Who are you going after as your patients? And then you also need to set some marketing milestones. By milestones, we mean if this should happen by a certain time, or if I send out this direct mail piece, I should get this many appointments. If I do this TV ad, I should get this many appointments, and those would be the milestones that you would set up for your marketing. Now, one of the other ones that's real important, particularly now, is the competition analysis. And you should think of how you are branded also. You are branded now by something a lot of us worked really hard to achieve within the university programs and through our associations and through acceptance of situations. You guys are all branded as AUDs. In fact, now I used to have patients come in and say, how come you're not an AUD? What kind of a person are you? Even though I had a doctorate in audiology for all of my career. But the deal is that this is a brand now. So when you you have your name and AUD, that means means a certain thing to the consumers. And so your brand then and your competitors are everyone that's just like you. All AUDs in the marketplace are someone that the consumer would look at and say, well, gee, I could go here, or I could go over here, or I could go over here. Now, there's industry competition, and so those would be others that look like me, and this would be the PhDs and the EDDs like me, and general physicians out there, and so on. And these are all people that are kind of industry competitors. Well, then there's also form competitors, and these are all those that are perceived to be the same, and that would be you and the others that look like you, as well as the form competition. And these would be MA audiologists, even otolaryngology people, hearing aid dealers, drugstores, Costco, insurance salesmen, insurance sales operations, the internet, direct sales. That's all form competition. And now then the last kind of competition is what we call generic competition. And these are products that cost the same as hearing care. Someday I could tell you about the lady who bought hearing aids, went on a cruise, came back and returned them so she could pay for her cruise. This was a few years ago, but so that's generic competition. These days it might be a cruise, it might be a new car, it could be assisted living care, it could be a number of things. So this is kind of how you think about your brand in the marketplace relative to other brands that are in the marketplace. So who is the competition? Well, it's the name of an entity. You need to find each entity and look at specifics about that entity. Find out what their market share is. How much of the market do you estimate they really have? Differences between your practice and their practice. And as we mentioned, there's location, skills, credentials, pricing, 5 or 6 other things that we could list here as well. And again, why are these people going to come to you and not go somewhere else? Now here's something I have in the pipe for publication, and nobody's really seen this yet, but that doesn't mean you haven't seen the iceberg analogy in the past. But to consumers, we all look like the same iceberg out there. You know, one looks the same as another, looks the same as another, looks the same as another, because we're all hearing care, right? Well, when we all look the same, it leads to commoditizing of amplification and commoditizing of the hearing care system. By commoditizing, I simply mean that that everybody is exactly the same, and therefore you go for the lowest price. And that's happening in our system, and we're working on the possibility of differentiation so we can reverse that. But so how different is your practice? You know, what does it look like? Well, it might look the same on top with all of these mountain things on top that looks the same as everybody else's. But look at the depth that we have in an audiology clinic that might not be in other types of clinics or in even other audiology clinics. So that depth is what's really important. So that's the kinds of things that you can amplify in your business plan to facilitate your competitive analysis. So tips on competition, just how are you different from them? Establish who the competition is, how you propose to do different things, and how you're gonna get your share and maybe more of the share than others within your targeted market. Now, human resources, people are the most expensive thing you can have. You'll need to clarify the administrative positions versus the clinical or professional positions. It's a good idea to present qualifications, specific duties, expected contributions, and the positions really should be summarized in a job description. You want to present the need for each position as well and justify that, because they're going to be looking for, do you have more people than you need, or do you have not enough people to make the plan be executed correctly? Now, milestones are important. By this time, we'll hire another person. So in human resources, it could be a consistent 2-week waiting period before we hire the second audiologist, or before, these days, we might hire an audiological assistant. When the fiscal reserves reach a specific level, when I have so much money in the bank, then I'm going to hire another person. When the front desk workload exceeds the patients of the clerical staff, could be another milestone that we would want to reach as well. So human resources don't tell us how many combined years of experience that you and your staff have, because nobody cares about that. They want to know what each and every individual is going to contribute into the system, and anything that sets your company apart from the others. If the principals have business experience, all the better. If they have had experience with a famous company, all the better, as we've said before. Now, the operational plan is probably the easiest thing to write, but it's tricky because you need to be brief here. Relevant information about how the practice will perform in the market with your particular concept. Immediate and long-term equipment needs, whether you're going to lease or purchase your equipment. Office environment, what kind of a facility are you going to have? Are you going to have 2,000 square feet? You're going to have 500 square feet, or somewhere in the middle? What's your treatment regimen? What are you going to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth, as the patient works through your clinic? Is this the easiest? This is the easiest section to write, but it's tricky because you want to write too much. You need to write enough, but not too much. What impressive levels are you going to reach in the next 3 years? Levels could be units, levels could be revenue, levels could be numbers of patients. It could be quite a number of things, depending on what your milestones might be, and how you're going to measure that. Who's responsible for that measure? You usually assign someone that's an employee for those things. And what criteria will constitute success, and what will cause rethinking of the business plan? Oh man, we really never should have done that. So now we really need to redo the plan, or, well, it's working pretty good, but we need to tweak it a little here or tweak it a little there, and maybe hire somebody to handle this particular issue. Now, the operational plan is what specifically are you offering to the market and to whom? And here, it's a big important problem. What's the big important problem that I'm going to solve here? It's a current problem, or it's an emerging problem that we'll be able to solve and other people won't over time. You want to state what you have and what you must do to solve the problem, but don't use acronyms. If you talk about an ABR or an OAE to somebody who's a business person, they're not going to have even a clue what you're talking about. So you need to specify those things, and if it's not pretty readily obvious what it is, you need to actually say something about what it is as well. Now, the financial forecast is important. This is the hardest part of the plan, in my opinion. It's the one that's given students the most trouble over the years. But the LivePlan really does help a lot with this. You don't really have to be an MBA or an accountant to do this. And as you'll hear them say, the business owner is the best person to really put together the financial forecast, because they know what they need, they know how they're going to use it, they know what the possible benefits of those certain financial investments will be. And the thing you can't do in a business plan financial forecast, you can't overstate or inflate things. You don't want to overstate how many patients you're going to see. You don't want to overstate how many units you're going to sell. And project revenues also need to be tied to borrowing dates. For example, if you get a $150,000 loan from someone, they're not going to walk in and write you a check for $150,000. They're going to say, well, how much do you need to get going? Well, equipment and this and that, maybe I need 60, 70 grand. Okay, then the next thing you do is when revenues get to a certain place, either higher or not as you expect, then you may borrow some more as necessary. Realistic estimates of overhead and expenses and salary projections in a break-even analysis are helpful. Break-even analysis, we have that in the book, but there's also some good examples online as well. Break-even simply means how much do I have to sell in services or units before I ever make any profit? And that's what we mean by a break-even figure. And how the measurable key indicators can be used, like you can measure in units, you can measure in numbers of patients or revenue milestones, as you mentioned earlier. Now here is one of the, a segment from one of the videos on financial forecasting.
Hi, welcome to the LivePlan Forecast. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the tool and how it's going to help you run your business better. This is a tool that will help you build a full strategic financial forecast. Don't be afraid of it. You don't have to have an MBA. You don't need to be a financial wizard. In fact, as the business owner, you are best positioned to go through the financial forecast. And with the knowledge you have about your business and the help that LivePlan gives you, you will come through this process with a strategic roadmap that'll keep your business healthy and will help you make financial decisions that are going to be good for your business. Let's take a look at how LivePlan can actually help you. So when you look at the LivePlan forecast, you're going to notice various different tools that are going to help you complete your financial forecast. We're going to give you a revenue forecast where you'll be able to take a business model that fits your business. It's completely customizable, and really think through that strategic forecast while we hold your hand with a wizard. They're going to then move into direct costs. What are the actual costs involved in selling your service or your product? LivePlan will give you another wizard and will walk you through that whole process, including thinking about direct labor. You'll get into your personnel. It's all your people expenses. People are usually the most important part of a business, and we help you think about it in the right financial formula here in the LivePlan Forecast tool. The expense tool will help you forecast all of your expenses, and if you want to, you can tie those expenses directly back to your revenue. We'll think about your assets, and you'll be able to actually put those tangible assets in. And then we'll move into the more section, which is all about cash flow, taxes, dividends, cash flow assumptions, every step of the way with a wizard and questions so that you're sure to do this correctly. Once you're done with the financial forecast, we actually automatically put together a profit and loss statement, a balance sheet statement, and a cash flow statement. These are all projections to help you run your business, a financial roadmap so that you can make better decisions. At this point, you've seen all the tools that LivePlan has to offer, and you're ready to just jump right in. Don't be afraid. LivePlan is here to help. It's going to guide you every step of the way, and at the end of it, you're going to have a full professional financial forecast that's going to help you make better decisions for your business. And
honestly, if something doesn't jive and you're having some issues with that, you can always call these people. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to talk about do's and don'ts, and I'll kind of run through these because we're beginning to come to the top of the hour again. But some do's, some things. Do have a mission statement that reflects the purpose and goals of your vision. Do have concrete goals and responsibilities for individuals within the clinic, and deadlines to guide the practice through from startup through the first 3 to 5 years. Most important, of course, is the first year and probably up to about the third year. Those are the most important. Have milestones for each individual area of your plan, and once achieved, then what are you going to do next? Assign responsibility to these milestones to employees, and compile exhaustive research on the competition, and that is an ongoing project. Again, that's another lecture as to how you go about doing that, but exhaustive research sometimes isn't enough. You need even more than that. Evaluate the success of the plan at least quarterly. So as you go through your plan and as you begin to execute everything, you begin to tweak it as necessary, and then evaluate the overall success. Have a clear metric for achievement of the goals, some units or revenue or something that's a clear metric for achievement. Don't overhype the opportunities. Don't set unattainable goals. I'm going to sell 100 hearing aids in the first 3 months. Well, I bet you won't in most cases. You want to set those more realistically. Don't undervalue and under-evaluate the need, though, for your business in your market. There are lots of needs out there that are going unmet, and you underestimate or don't underestimate or lose sight of the competition in your market. And if you look very closely at them, you won't. Don't develop unrealistic financial projections. You got to be as conservative as possible. Present your expenses as higher and present your sales as lower than you really think they're going to be. Now here, the last part of this is looking at 11 business planning mistakes. First, one mistake is people don't consider successful companies in their business decisions. There's some successful companies out there in the market that you're planning on entering, and you want to consider that they are successful businesses. So you have to, again, know as much about them as possible and make certain decisions. Don't focus all on the future, because funding sources want to know how you're going to get paid, how they're going to get paid back, and that might not be in the future. They'd rather have it sooner rather than later. So yes, you talk about the future, but you also talk about the current and the recent and in the recent future. So people not tailoring to management's biographies. In other words, the people that are in charge of the startup or the existing practice, you want to tailor a lot of the development of either the startup business or the new business that you're going for to the biographies of the individuals that are working in the clinic right now. You want to get realistic estimates of overhead expenses, salary projections, and put them in a break-even analysis, or at least know what those are. And realistic estimates, and I'd inflate those slightly to show that it's a conservative estimate. And then, of course, the milestones, we talked about that already. One of the things that some investors don't like is if they have to sign a non-disclosure statement, and you'll see that in the LivePlan, where you can have people sign that or not have people sign that. Using too much investor feedback. If you send your business plan to 5 investors and they all come back with little things that said this is no good and this isn't any good and that kind of good, it doesn't mean you have to change everything in your plan. So you may want to send it to the 6th one, and they're going to like what you said rather than what these other guys said. Don't overemphasize the first mover advantage. First mover advantage would be things like being the first one in the market with a certain product or a certain procedure or something to that effect. In my case, we were the first ones into the marketplace, into our market with Lyric in 2008. Now those kinds of first mover advantages last for maybe a year to 2. But when they open up things to the rest of the group, then your first mover advantage goes away. And so don't overemphasize those things because they can go away rather soon. Focusing too much on your experience and education. I'm a doctor now. I have all this experience because of my educational program. That's important and very, very good for your patients. And you should say that and interact with that, but you don't want to overemphasize those things because guess what? The other people out there are also doctors too. So So you can't focus too much on that, but you want to focus on it enough so that they realize that you're different than, say, the dispensers, for example. Defining the market size too broadly. Don't, if you're in a certain market area, don't expand that to the whole state of, for example, the whole state of Colorado, because not all those people are going to come see you for sure. And then you need to have a plan to capture market share, and your plan to capture market share is how you stay in business and how you definitely directly compete with the competitive people. Now, I might just say that it's been my pleasure to be involved with you guys this evening, and I might just say that here is the link again for LivePlan. And again, I have no financial investment with them at all, but I think that it is indeed the 21st century method of doing business planning. And if you choose to use our book for some of the supplemental things like marketing chapters and fiscal management chapters and some of those kinds of things, the code that you use at checkout at Plural Publishing is AP213. I think they'll give you a 25% discount. And of course, Bob Glazer and I each get $6 on each one of those, so we're making $1 million on the book. And the interesting thing is that it's been really fun to put the book together and watch how more people are getting involved in the business side of what we do. And again, it's been my pleasure to be with you. And now, if you have some questions that come up, I'm more than happy to try to take some questions. But I know we're 5-6 minutes over here, so if you have a need to move on and get another glass of wine, or you have a need to want to hang out, and I'm more than happy to answer questions for a while.
Thank you, Dr. Trainer, for the presentation. We have some questions in the queue, and Andrew will be reading those for you.
Okay.
Any questions that you have, go ahead and drop them in the questions box.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. Our first question is, can you discuss market assessment as it applies to private practice focused on pediatrics?
Okay. Well, the pediatric community, market assessment you would really go and look at some interesting things with the pediatric community. For example, you might look at the birth rate. You might look at the number of children in schools. You might look at some of might check with the school districts and see how many referrals the school districts make. And once you have a lot of those kinds of issues, then you can begin to kind of drill down on things. So if you have some general issues with pediatrics, some general numbers, then you can look at how many of those kids will have otitis media, or how many of those kids will have this. That I worked with a strong group of a kind of a poverty level clinic here in Colorado, and I saw all kinds of children that were referrals from the pediatricians that worked with that group. We didn't make $1 million from it, but we certainly got a lot of good rapport with the referral sources for working with their kids. That's one thing that if you do work with children in the clinic, at least to some degree, the family practice people and pediatricians, they begin to realize that you are a referral source for them, or a referral place for them, and they appreciate it, and they begin to send you the patients that do have more resources and capabilities. So the pediatrics isn't a lot different than looking at the older population. You just use different statistics and different numbers to drill those things down into a market that you're going to be going after. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Dr. Trainer. The next question is more of a comment than a question, but I would like to share with you nonetheless. Thanks, Dr. Trainer. A good review from your classes 30 years ago at CSU. Thought I'd share that.
Wow, CSU was quite a while ago, for sure.
And then our next question, we probably have time for one or two more. How often should we revisit our business plan?
Business plans should be reviewed once a quarter. Now, unless you execute your business plan and in the first month nothing happens, then you know that you really need to revisit it immediately so you can make things happen. But generally, you revisit it once a quarter. Now, if you're preparing a plan for you're an existing clinic, then you may want to and you're doing pretty well. You may want to revisit it at least once a year, maybe twice a year, just so you can tweak it according to new competition that arises in the marketplace. Maybe somebody's doing different kinds of advertising. Maybe they're doing different kinds of have a different approach to the market than you have. You know, we used to be, for years, we had not really a lot of competition. Now we've gone from, as I mentioned earlier, 4 competitors to 11, and those 11 competitors are going to be trying to compete with you, and so they're going to be trying to make this happen and that happen and something else happen. They're going to try different things, and you need to monitor that all the time. But the business plan, if you're a successful clinic, I would monitor it at least once, maybe twice a year. If you're a brand new clinic, you need to monitor it at least once a quarter and maybe sooner than that.
Excellent. And it looks like we have time for probably one more question. How many investors does one typically propose their business plan to?
You know, these days, I just talked to a colleague who's looking at purchasing a practice this afternoon, and my advice to her was, you take your plan and you don't just go to one of the manufacturers because they're going to make you a deal. You don't go to maybe 2 of them. I'd go to as many as I felt comfortable with. I think probably Sonova and Demont are probably looking to buy clinics that they can turn into Hearing Life and Connect Hearing clinics. But the other manufacturers, I would look at all of those. And if you have a banker that you've worked with a long time, that they know you really well, it could be that the bank would fund a practice, either a practice startup, but more likely a practice expansion if you're dealing with certain bankers all the time. So I think you should at least go to maybe 2 to 4, somewhere in there, and look at what they may do. Now, that doesn't mean that there's 4 people that you really want to send it to. You may send it to the first 1 or 2 and one of those guys fund it. So a lot depends on your situation. A lot depends on whether it's startup or expansion. A lot depends on how long you've been in the community and so on. And if you have a person that's a banker that you've known and you have a good reputation with, and they have a hearing loss, even better. So so I guess that's how I would approach that question.
Excellent. And it looks like we had another question come in. We'll try to squeeze in before 9:15. As an employee of an existing private practice looking to expand and open an office in another location, how involved / invested should I be in the company's business plan?
And I guess I would ask, in the company's business plan, is that the company that you're starting, or is that the company that you're leaving? So I would answer it this way. If it's the company that you're leaving, they're going to include you in their business plan as much as they need to. And if they know and you're upfront with them about your planning to leave, they will make adjustments accordingly. But they may have in their business plan this particular person. It might not necessarily be you. It might be what you were doing. It might be what you were doing plus some other things or whatever. And so in the company that you're leaving, you just want to be as upfront with them as you feel comfortable being upfront with them. And again, if it's going to be in a community that's quite a ways away from where you are, it's probably not that big of an issue. want to watch out for is constrictive competitive agreements, where you so these competitive agreements make a substantial limitations on your ability to practice. So watch out for that, and it probably isn't as big of an issue to the people in the practice that you're leaving.
Thank you, Dr. Trainer. It looks like we are out of time for today's session. If you have additional questions, please send them to info@audiologist.org, and we will forward those questions to Dr. Trainer. If you have friends and colleagues that were unable to attend the webinar today, please let them know that the session has been recorded. We will send a link out to attendees after the recording is posted. For more information about future SATA practice management webinars and to register, please visit www.audiologist.org/students. Thank you to everyone, and thank you to Dr. Trainer again, and have a great evening.